Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me. This is the fourth installment of the My Favorite AWA Remco tournament. So I did go ahead and randomly select the rest of the competitors for this first round, and it looks like I've got about 4 videos remaining to include this video. My floor is kind of a mess right now because I have all the figures scattered and ready for me to make the video for that respective series. Or that respective group of figures. These are so many awesome figures. I absolutely love these Remco collections. I still think that the LJN, Remco or LJN customs are still going to be my favorite always. But man, getting these Remco customized, I'm like so excited about these videos. But it sucks because it's kind of a hard battle, when you're talking about these figures because you want to see them all win. But enough of that. Let's get into the first matchup. In fact, let me read out the matches for this video. So we're going to see Abdullah the Butcher taking on Dennis Condry. The Sheikh Al-Kasi is going to take on Nick Bockwinkle. We're going to see Scott Hogg Irwin from the Long Riders taking on Kurt Hennig from Gagne Raiders. And the Ultimate Warrior is going to square off against Jerry Crushwell Blackwell. And finally, we're going to see Bobby Eaton take on Brodie Lee. Now, Abdullah the Butcher, even though the Sheikh is a custom, I consider it part of my original line. So those two, Nick Bockwinkle, Kurt Hennig, Scott Irwin, and Crusher Blackwell, those 6 figures are all from the original line. Alright, so as I said, Abdullah the Butcher is going to be taking on Dennis Condry. So we'll start with Dennis Condry. So back in 1980, there were a couple of guys, Dennis Condry being one, and Randy Rose being the other, formulating the first tandem of the Midnight Express. Of course, they were managed by Jim Cornette. And it seemed like over the years, Jim Cornette was always managing the Midnight Express. Over the 31 years, I think the group finally disbanded in 2011. So for over 30 years, again, you had a multitude of wrestlers as part of the Midnight Express. Under Southeast, Wrestling, they had the original tandem of, where's the other guy? Here he is. Of Condry and Rose, and a few years later, Bobby Eaton joined the team as a member of the Midnight Express. So Condry and Eaton, probably 2 of your more popular names. But like I said, I mean they got constantly switched over. Who else was part of this group? Stan Lane, I think, joined the team towards the late 80s, especially when they transitioned over to WCW. Later on in the 1990s, they came back once again in WWF. I think Sparkplug, Bobby Holly was one, and I think Bart Gunn was another. So those are just a few of the names. Again, they probably had a dozen different characters as members of the Midnight Express at some point. So definitely one of the most popular tag teams of the 80s, probably early 90s. Let's see. Paulie Dangerously was like one of the managers. I think Jimmy Hart managed them one partition of Midnight Express at one point. But like I said, Jim Cornette, for all those decades, was usually the one who promoted that tag team, who managed that tag team. And with Condry here, so Dennis Condry, absolutely fantastic look. Goes on par with his real life. I think they did a really solid look with this figure. What I like about this, and it could be both negative and positive, I think it's kind of a positive in the sense that the head sculpt isn't like 100% 3D printed. So the great thing about this is it looks like the wrestler, but it really blends in with your original AWA Remco, facial schemes. A little bit of a cartoonish, not, what's a good example? Ultimate Warrior. This is like perfect 3D printed, right? So it kind of gives you a nice blend of articulation in the face where you can actually see the features, but it kind of keeps with the same scheme of the original Remco line. A fantastic figure, and he does square off against, if not my favorite Remco from the original line, he's got to be in the top 5, top 6 somewhere. This is just a fantastic figure. And, you know, one of very few figures that actually have the little flabby belly, they call it. A lot of these figures, you know, you got these really, you know, chiseled abs and everything. Now, if you've seen Abdullah the Butcher, you know, he's like right up there with like King Kong Bundy. He's like a really, really heavy set fella. So, he was also really, really psychotic. So, as you see at the top of his forehead, I've talked about this in the past. He used to take like knives or razors, forks, whatever. He would just like kind of carve up his forehead before matches. And, you know, they'd still have blood on the utensil. And later on in the match, he'd hide like these forks inside his pants and whatnot. And so he'd get someone in like a headlock, and he would like start poking them with the fork. I think I read later on, he actually had HIV or not HIV, hepatitis maybe, or something like that. And I'm like, dude, you are a serial killer in waiting. You knowing that you're infected and you're going to try and purposely infect other guys. I don't care how fun he was to watch in the ring. I mean, that right there is just insane. To me, to my knowledge, I think he is the only WWF or, you know, WWE Hall of Famer who has never participated in WWF/WWE. So that's kind of an interesting fact. And like I said, it's just a quality figure. With the loose figures, I said before, I don't have the accessories for all of them. And he does come with, you know, pants and boots and whatnot. But for the loose figure, you know, it's fine. You know, it's something to put on the loose display. If I want a complete figure, I could just look at my carded figures, and that's fine. Like I said, Abdullah Butcher, one of the more fun characters and one of the more insane characters. One of the better figures in the AWA Remco line. Does he defeat the custom Dennis Condry of the Midnight Express in this round? A great overall quality figure, but yes, I am going to give the nod to Abdullah the Butcher. I think he's just too fun to pass up on. So, Abdullah the Butcher defeats Condry of the Midnight Express. That's okay. We still have one member of the Midnight Express remaining, and Bobby Eaton. So, there's still chances you will see a Midnight Express member move on to round 2. The next matchup I had laid out is the Sheikh Al-Kassi taking on Nick Bockwinkle. Again, the Sheikh, if you want an original figure loose, you're probably going to pay like $1,000 or more. So this is custom, but I am classifying it as an original figure. You know, same thing with Borisukov and the Barbarian, you know. Those guys that are really going to cost you, you know, $1,000, $2,000 individually. Sometimes you just got to go the custom route. And because they are supposed to closely resemble the original, they're not part of my custom display. They're part of my original. So for the sake of this video, again, I am classifying the Sheikh as an original. And, of course, Nick Bockwinkle already original. We will start with Nick Bockwinkle, only because he's one of those guys right up there with like Larry Zbyszko and later on Rick Martel, Curt Hennig even, as like really super crazy solid wrestlers that the fans just gravitated towards. Larry Zbyszko and Nick Bockwinkle obviously are the two premier wrestlers that it seems like Vern Gagne, whenever he dropped his belt to someone, he wanted to drop to someone he thought would really rile in the fans. And, you know, he passed over guys like Hulk Hogan, who probably deserved it, probably put more butts in the seats than anyone else. And so he would drop it to Nick Bockwinkle here, or he would drop it to Larry Zbyszko there. Again, guys like Rick Martel is probably like a year champ. Curt Hennig was like a year champ before he came to the WWF. So, history of this guy is pretty solid. The figure itself, again with the accessory, kind of like a Rick Martel type accessory with that vest, a sweater vest on. And just, good looking figure. I mean, the rest of the body, again, they're all the same. So you're really looking at head sculpt and accessories. And I don't have a lot of history with Bockwinkle outside of what I've learned over the years. Quality figure. Does he make it to a second round, a third round, etc.? When this tournament started, I would have said, yeah, he could have been a second, third, even a fourth round figure. I mean, it's good enough. But with the luck of the draw, it's really hard to say that any of these guys are going to make it into round 2, let alone 3, 4, 5. And I've already said before, the Sheikh could possibly be the greatest original figure. And I said a lot of your Series 5 Matt Mania figures are going to absolutely kill in this tournament, I think. And like I said, you got the Barbarian, you've got the Warlord, you've got the Barbarian, you've got Sheikh. Who else was on there that I'm looking at right down here? Oh, Buddy Rose, another amazing piece I absolutely love. You got the Referee, and it just a whole slew of characters that are just absolutely kill it. I always thought the Black Card grudge match figures were the best, but man, these single figures are just lights out. We'll do a quick review of Al-Kassi, the Sheikh Al-Kassi. And of course, you guys remember him in the early 90s. WWF brought him in as General Adnan because he was very reminiscent in the face to Saddam Hussein. So while the first Gulf War was going off, they had the whole General Adnan. They brought in the Iron Sheik as, one of his soldiers. They brought in Sergeant Slaughter as a turncoat as one of his soldiers and whatnot. So, and of course later on when, Sergeant Slaughter became good guy again, they had that little team up with like Jim Duggan. I can't remember who else was on that team, but they just wiped the floor with the bad guys. And General Adnan was one of those guys who were in that match. Didn't really look like an appealing wrestler. Like, he just looked like a manager who was thrust into a ring. But I don't know. I didn't see him wrestle as a kid. I don't know anything about his wrestling style or anything outside of what I saw, in WWF in the early 90s. But the figure itself is absolute pristine. Absolutely love it. No doubter. A second round candidate in the Sheikh Al-Kassi. Alright. The next matchup is going to feature Scott Irwin going up against Curt Hennig. So, Curt Hennig, we already saw one custom of Curt Hennig as the Mr. Perfect character, and now we see his original Series 1 release, or was it Series 2? Nope, I take it back. It was a Series 2 release. Tag team partner was Greg Gagne, and as the son of Vern Gagne, owner, promoter, always heavyweight champion of AWA. Of course, you're going to see guys like Greg Gagne get multiple figure releases. He got probably one of the best figures with alongside Jim Brunzell, and now he's got another one of the great figures alongside Curt Hennig. And Curt Hennig already making a huge name for himself in AWA prior to coming to WWF. He was a WCW wrestler. I mean, the man was just all over the place. One of the best talents of all time. And I don't think he lived a long life. If I'm not mistaken, I think he died in like his 40s or something. And I don't know what it is about wrestling that causes all these guys to have like heart attacks and all this other stuff. But, he is just one of those mega superstars who we've lost way too early. With the Gagne Raiders, absolutely love the clothing accessory. Being an army man myself, obviously, the BDU, woodland camouflage uniform is really going to appeal to me. Great looking figure all around. And he does battle against a member of the Lung Riders, Scott Irwin. I don't remember Scott Irwin. The Lung Riders in general, I think... what was I said? The Smoking Guns in WWF with Billy and Bart Gunn. I think at one point they were called Lung Riders. But as far as these guys individually, I don't really remember them. Now, in this video, this is a great figure. Probably a top 15 among the original Remcos. Especially with the accessory and everything. But, come on. Curt Hennig. I mean, he could have been without accessories. I still would have chosen Curt Hennig. He's just an awesome figure, just an awesome character in my life and everything. And, man, what was it? 93 Royal Rumble. After Ric Flair had just won the 92 Rumble out of the number 3 spot. Second, you see Curt Hennig enter that Royal Rumble in 93 and go after Flair. You know it was only a matter of time. I think he got more enjoyment for throwing him out of the ring than he did in the 1990 Rumble, where he was one of the last two. Heck, he probably got more enjoyment from that than he did from winning the Intercontinental belt with WWF. So, just fun matches all around. And I said Curt Hennig defeated Scott Irwin. Next matchup is going to feature Jerry Crusher Blackwell from the Series 4 Grudge match, going up against my last custom of the Ultimate Warrior. And this head mold, I showed it briefly earlier, is just absolutely incredible. Now this is going to be an absolute killer of a choice. This one I might talk about for 30 minutes just because I don't know who to choose. We will start with Ultimate Warrior, and just look at the hair. The overall detail on this figure. The face and the paint job. And of course, you know, Ultimate Warrior was about as jacked as anyone you'd ever seen. So, you know, when you see like these 20 packs on these figures, you know, this guy actually makes a lot of sense. And this could be the best Warrior, even better than the one that won in, I think, was it first video? First or second video? I think it was the second video. I had the first custom Warrior, and this one might even be better. And that, like I said, that the hair alone makes this figure amazing. As we know, Dingo Warrior originated right there along Sting in the mid 80s at AWA. Neither of those wrestlers were particularly very talented. They were just big buff bodybuilders who were brought in, and over time they kind of had to learn their craft. You know, Sting went on to be one of the greatest wrestlers ever, one of the biggest fan favorites ever, and Ultimate Warrior went on to have one of the most fastest and incredible pushes of any wrestler ever. You know, Intercontinental Champion, Heavyweight Champion, dominated in War Rumbles, had just massive amount of sales and merchandising. But he was also one of the most hated wrestlers ever. And of course, I didn't know anything about this as a kid. This is something I've been learning out over the years as I started collecting and started listening to like interviews and podcasts and these shoot videos and stuff like that of some of the things that he did, not just to guys in the locker room, but to like kids and stuff, how he brushed them off. And I'm like, man, you're taking my second favorite wrestler ever, and now all I have as memories of is him being this douchebag. Sad story. I think it was like 2014. He just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and a couple days later, he was gone. Another one of those guys who died way too early. I mean, he was probably early 50s, so, you know, this isn't a man who lived his life. Crusher Blackwell. The real Crusher Blackwell, I think, was a lot thicker than this. But, you know, a good-looking figure, great fighting pose. You know, I love the attached singlet and everything. I mean, this is overall a pure quality figure. Absolutely crazy about this one. Again, I've talked about top 6 figures, and this has to be near the top, right? If not in the top 6, I don't know. I would at least say top 10. I'll give him that. Top 10 figure. But a lot of your Matt Mania figures and a lot of your Series 4 Grudge Match figures should be at the very top with, like, I don't know, Brunzell and Greg Gagne, you know, being kind of tossed in there somewhere as well. So much history with Ultimate Warrior, not enough history with Jerry Blackwell. Awesome figure, but come on. The head sculpt alone makes this one of the best, gives him one of the best opportunities to win this entire tournament. And I know I say that with a lot of figures, but this is a truly awesome one. So he is going to move on to the next round. And the last matchup is going to feature from the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton, as he goes up against Brodie Lee. I do have a action figure with Brodie Lee, kind of like a in memory of action figure that I purchased from Ringside Collectibles. I don't know, earlier this year. I'm thinking. I never saw Brodie Lee wrestle, to my knowledge, but he must have been like a huge fan favorite to get kind of the outpouring that he received. I could have done some research on him, but again, he's not. He's more of a modern day wrestler, and you know how I feel about modern day wrestling. I started watching wrestling probably late 80s, early 90s, and I stopped watching around 98, I want to say. Because around 1998, is when I really became baseball obsessed. And to me, watching the Cubs on TV were more important than anything else at that time. At least during the summertime, so obviously during the school year. I mean, what was airing in 1998, that was big. Being a WB fan at the time, Buffy obviously was up there, Dawson's Creek, Felicity, things like that, Charmed. I pretty much watched strictly WB for the most part, so that's why you get a lot of those teeny bopper shows. I don't really have a lot of history with either one of these guys. Bobby Eaton, as a member of the Blue Bloods in WCW, tag team with Lord Steven Regal, and that's another thing I keep getting confused. William Regal, William Steven Regal, Lord Steven Regal, he goes by all these different names. And so for like the longest time, I was like, this can't be the same guy. You got a Steven Regal in AWA, and then you got this Lord Steven Regal in WCW, but William Regal / Lord Steven Regal, he was born like 1968 or something. So at the time that the Remco figures would have come out, he would have been like 17, 18 years old. So not the same guy. Fortunately, I've had a couple of commenters correct me. I think in one of my original posting videos where I talked about the Series 3 AWA Remco figures, where I said they may have been the same person, but I wasn't sure. But Bobby Eaton, that's about as far as I know about this character. Midnight Express, Blue Bloods, storied career, obviously. Still one of those guys in the 2000s that was wrestling on the independent circuit as one of the Midnight Express members. Brodie Lee, I have absolutely no history with. I don't know anything about him whatsoever. Based on the individual action figures, with that monster beard, Duck Dynasty beard is what I call it, I absolutely love that. I would kill to be able to grow a beard like that. That is so awesome. My wife would hate it, but you know what? If it makes me happy, she'll have to deal. I'm going to select Brodie Lee. Again, this is another one of those head molds which are just so fascinating and so well crafted that I think he would go a lot further in this tournament than the Bobby Eaton figure would. So, for this matchup, Brodie Lee moves on to round 2, and Bobby Eaton is finished for now. Alright, so, where's my notebook? I'll have to pause for a moment while I try to remember who won which battle. Alright, Abdullah the Butcher defeated Midnight Express, Dennis Condry. The Sheikh Al-Kassi defeated Nick Bockwinkle. Kurt Hennig from Gagne Raiders defeated Scott Irwin of the Long Riders. The Ultimate Warrior defeated Jerry Crusher Blackwell. And finally, Brodie Lee just defeated Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton. You know where my mind is going every time I say midnight. Alright guys, that is the conclusion of video number 4. So again, I have 3 sets of figures laid out. So it looks like we're going to have 7 videos for round 1. The last set of figures I have 5 full matchups here. But like 3 of the last 4 figures we're going to look at in that video is going to feature a Barbarian figure. So, John Nord. I don't know. I might have to two Barbarians moving forward in this tournament. And they're going to go back to back, so that'll at least be interesting to see all three versions. But that's it for now, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching, and leave a comment if you want to. If not, I will see you in the next video. Talk to you guys soon.